Good morning. I'm trying to make a video to update my channel. Um, that mess, excuse that mess. It's not mine. It belongs to somebody that I share this house with. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I am trying to organize my thoughts musically and to try to write music in a way that goes against how I was raised and how I was taught in school. So basically, it's like removing the programming. And I had something got in my nose and it allergies. But basically, I'm trying to write music in a way where I don't paint myself into a corner and then go, how can I possibly bring everything to closure? Because I had a bad habit of kind of just winging it and hoping for the best. And that strategy is not going to work anymore. Because if I want to write good music, I have to be aware of how good music is made. Because there are definitely teachings out there that, show you how to write music that is pleasant. But then I think on all these memories that I've been recovering from a few different lifetimes, and I just realized that my musical exploration is so much more vast than the one life I was temporarily obsessed about. And I've gotten a greater sense of where I'm meant to be going on my journey as a result of kind of just breaking through the wall and looking at how music can be used to elevate human consciousness and to kind of liberate the mind rather than making it a slave. Because I've noticed that, I've been different people, I've been variations of myself, and it's given me a more balanced perspective. I've come to realize that if you try to fit yourself into a box of what you think you're supposed to be, a part of you is going to end up being split off, and it could lead to you having an experience elsewhere where you're having to deal with all the things you try to shut out. So it's like you can't close yourself off to your experiences, to who you are. And people in this world act like, the spiritual, teachings are kind of just mumbo jumbo, while you got a bunch of egoists using those teachings to like make themselves feel like grandiose and powerful and popular. And it we live in a bizarre world because it's very much dysfunctional. So I have an idea, and it's in the key of G major, but I kind of happened upon another idea. I love minor keys more than major keys. Major keys sound too strident to me, but I'm thinking there might be a way to soften G major because it's a very like hard and bright key, and I don't like that. So there might be a way to just like not make it in the key of G purely. Cause what I realized about myself in a different lifetime is I kind of just did what I felt like I wanted to do, regardless if it was good or not. And because I thought about it, and I thought about how obstinate I was as a personality towards a teacher who very much cared about me, but I had all sorts of conflicts about. And the more I remember about this kind teacher that I had, the more I realized, like, he's taught me so much more than I ever gave him credit for. And, my actions basically created all this karma that I had to experience, where I needed to be humbled. I needed to basically have a falling out and to really experience the truth, first and foremost, about the nature of this world. And it was a very bitter pill to swallow, because it's like you cannot, put yourself on a pedestal, even though if you're even though people are gifted and talented, or, have these skills that we can only dream of. Nobody should be placing themselves on a pedestal, because ultimately those gifts were bestowed upon them from another being. And that's what people don't realize. You don't suddenly have genius without there being a divine being that gave it to you. So there's no such thing as self-made, even though Beethoven very much liked to think that he was self-made. He was not ever self-made. There was always spiritual influence in his life, because I know from firsthand experience there was spiritual influence. So Joseph Haydn wanted me to kind of be more flexible about how I approached music. He didn't agree with the things that I wanted to do, but he very much respected who I was as a person. Very much saw that I was passionate, very much saw how driven I was to, do music, but I was not very open minded to learning. And that was part of the problem as to why I felt like lessons didn't quite stick. But the thing was, seeds were always being planted, and he was a very, like, intelligent person, more soulful than I realized. And he was the kind of person that wanted me to, have a foundation, and to be able to use that foundation to build a wonderful life for myself. But he also wanted me to recognize that his legacy, would help me to create, something more. And that's what I never realized. It's like I never realized just how generous of a man he was. And I know that when I talk to people, in my social circles about things, I was not being completely honest. I Even though I acted like I never learned a thing, I learned more than I wanted to admit, because I was in an uncomfortable place of not wanting to admit that I needed a father figure in my life. And so this father figure wanted me to recognize that that the way I go about things needs to be done in a way that is gracious. But I didn't learn that. So I'm having to make up for it by remembering other lifetimes. And I've remembered a lifetime that was ultimately very dark and moody, effeminate in ways. And even though I was really good at piano, it was always like I was in limbo. And it was odd. It was almost like it was a reality that I existed in, where I was just kind of stuck in a bubble of existence. And it was connected to a larger existence. It was almost like a part of my consciousness just split off and went elsewhere because as Ludwig, I've repressed a lot of what made me sensitive, empathetic, and even though I had the ability to empathize with people, to sympathize with people, I was very much more concerned about being, you know, in a state of where I have like tight control on everything, including how I felt, the way I did things. But I was very much ignoring the things that made me more of a visionary. And so the kind of the result of that meant that I had to smack my head against the wall to really make things happen, while a different existence came into manifestation and was a great pianist through a different side of the spectrum. So Beethoven was the masculine side of things. There was another pianist that I remembered being who was very much the opposite side of things, but there was so much overlap between the two individuals that I recognized within myself that I thought that for a person to be so disconnected from who they are, it creates conflict. And that kind of conflict is actually everywhere in this world. You see people that are so disconnected from truth that it's creating chaos. It's their duality is creating ugliness. And so I figured if I can find a way to get people to realize that they need to merge their light and dark together as one complete being, the dysphoria they're having right now would disappear. Like literally, it would not be there because division creates conflict, and unity does something else altogether. But it's unity through love. Love is the light. So I figured through my musical journey, I am going to shed a light on what I want to do in regards to music. As a pianist, I am not very good at it, not yet, and I think the arthritis is starting to set in. So I don't know how long I'll be able to keep playing piano because I feel pain in all my joints. So I figured if I could write music for other people to play, that's gonna do a lot more good than just me trying to play my music. It's if more people can play what I write, then it's gonna help in the mission of bringing people together. And that's just my thinking. So let me show you what I got. So what I've been trying to do is just disorganized and messy. I have tried to think of a plan, but it's just a little too random. So what I've decided was that I was gonna simplify what I want to do and just build it out in chunks. So right now, here is a framework. I haven't added the bar lines yet, but there are 3 bars right here. You got A, and then you got A. This line on top. On the bottom, the bass is doing one thing, and then the other. I am still thinking about how the color is changing here going to here, and it's gonna be a good exercise for me in playing around with musical colors, because right now you can see that I've thought about the counterpoint, as you can see the motion here. So you got like contrary motion, you got oblique motion right here, you got more contrary motion. So I'm thinking about how G major is gonna transform into E minor, but it's gonna be an exercise in for me to realize that how I need to think about music is gonna be more divine than how people typically teach music here. When people teach music here, it can start off too rigid, and that's because when humans teach other humans about something they learned from yet another human, they're only getting fragments of a greater whole. So it takes a lot of humans to make one complete picture, but still, because humans are humans and they're not enlightened beings, it's gonna be a picture that is still very much trapped by a veil. If you can get what I mean, if you don't get what I mean, it really does take a lot of learning and reflection to really understand what the veil is. Alora, my friend, had these has these teachings about illumination, and she has a website, the illumination of Metatron.com. Metatron is a word that has symbolic meaning. The angel himself, the divine being himself, is literally not named Metatron. It's a name that was assigned to him by people to represent the role that he has. And angel names are very much just a representative of our roles. So my name, Elysiel, means paradise of God. It's very much representative of the role that I would have as Heavenly Father's messenger. In Christian teachings, they say that the seraphim are like part of the highest order, and that they're the ones that are just constantly singing around the throne of God. Well, seraphim are not the highest order, because species is different from rank. And Alora has more information on alorasangels.com about the difference between species and rank. You have to work hard to earn a rank. So the angels, angel means a messenger of the divine. So these messengers work hard to obtain the ranks that they were basically predestined to earn. Everything that we do is predestined. There's nothing random. Like, none of it's random. There are times where surprises happen, and it's because we exist in a world that is a collective of many different kinds of people from many different kinds of backgrounds. The variation is literally because we are all from different places, we've all lived different journeys, but ultimately we're sharing in the same collective of dreams. And there's a reason why all these esoteric teachings are made confused, because human beings would literally build themselves a Tower of Babel to exalt themselves like they are God. And that is wrong. That's why the language of esoteric teachings are confused. That is why. That's why you're not meant to understand it, because you need to be humble. You can learn from looking at other people's lifetimes. So, like Beethoven, look at his lifetime. That's who I was. Look at his lifetime. Look at all the hardship. Look at the conflicts that he had between himself and other people. But also look at how wonderful of a person he was when he was not emotionally triggered. Just look at how incredible he was as a human being. There's always different sides to a person. And the teachings that Allura teaches are about teaching people to recognize that the pillar of light and dark are basically reflections of one another. And that there's these teachings that are part of that, in which it shows people how they could transcend the human bias that traps them into a state of darkness and prevents them from reaching illumination. Metatron is the boundary of which we live in. You cannot be illuminated if you have all sorts of secrets that you don't know about yourself. And a lot of people in this world have no stinking clue about who they are. And that's why there's so much evil and conflict, is because they don't know who they are and they're acting based upon surface level information. Information forms consciousness. Consciousness is light, light is spirit. And Allura teaches so much about how our purpose is meant to elevate us beyond that purpose, to transcend that purpose, and to have a greater awakening where we are no longer dead, but become spiritually alive. And then we go to the next level. There's always many levels. The universe is multidimensional, but every planet has its own dimensions. That's what she taught. So through my music, being that I am a muse in training, being that after I pass, I will not become just a cherub all over again, but I will become basically a cherub that gets promoted to a species upgrade to become a seraph. So as a seraphim, I will be involved with delivering divine inspiration through people who are able to channel divine beings. And the process of bridging the gap, being a bridge from heaven to earth, is going to help earth to heal. And I've always believed that I was a conduit, that I am never in full control of what I do and what my body does, because there's a greater being that will intercede on my behalf, because I'm just the avatar personality of this greater being. Everything happens for a reason. And it's like, I've learned that if something happens and I get sent from one direction to a different direction, I go, well, that's like an example of course correction. I was trying to go the wrong way. I needed to go a different direction. People don't realize that. People get so mad, being like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what are you getting mad about? You're the one that's going in the wrong direction. It's like, if more people could realize that they've been going the wrong way, that it would help fix things. So my destiny involves music. But the thing is, being that I'm at this phase in my life where I realized I've spent so much time being a composer, a performer, an orchestrator of sorts. I've done ballets, I've done nocturnes, I've done ballades, I've done symphonies, I've done quartets, I've done, different chamber pieces, I've explored different styles of music, and I've done everything basically as these different personalities. Ultimately, now it's for me to write music for other people to basically deliver. Like, I'm just here to take the inspiration from up above and to help breathe new life into this world, because this world is sinking. It's like watching the Titanic sink, and you're just like, hearing the string musicians in the background play the sad song, and you're just watching it sink. But the captains are not sinking with the ship. They're trying to take off and get off the ship, and you're just like, what are you doing? But man, it's like if people could just wake up and realize that they can't do it all by themselves, it would help bridge the gap between heaven and what is supposed to happen on earth. It would help make earth more like heaven if people could realize that everything that they do here is never by themselves. Everything I do is not by myself. And I'm not weak because of that. I'm not powerless because of that. That's that's how the universe works. Literally, nothing happens by itself. There's always a connection of energy between a greater being and a smaller being. From the alpha to the omega, there's always that connection. But here on earth, people believe that they themselves are powerful when they're not, because they've let their ego step in the way. They've allowed ego to walk into their temples and proclaim themselves God and speak profanities against the Lord. And that's the truth. Humanity has said, we don't need help, and that's why everything's going wrong. Because humanity needs help. And the moment that people can realize that, the sooner they can realize that, the better. You're not above needing help. You're always going to need help. I get help all the time. And there's no shame in that. I have a good relationship with Heavenly Father. He helps me all the time. So I just want people to realize you're never alone. You only act like you're alone. And that's because you're leaving yourself in the dark. I'm gonna do some updates to my channel. I'll hope it goes in a better direction, because it's been hard work trying to get myself all on one page, but the more memories I recover, the more I understand why I've been so scattered. Oh man. But basically the thumbnail that I'm gonna put in this video is gonna let you know, hey, I started remembering more things, and it explains a lot. I've always had these moments where I just stared off into the distance, and it's like, you know what? Something happened there, and then I realized what it was, and I was like, it explains things. It's like all these different people that I live my life as. People that act like are not, people act like they're not connected. Everything, even though people act like everything goes back to Beethoven, it's like funny enough, for me, everything seems to be going back to me, because I was Beethoven, but I was also a few other musicians. It's wild. I've lived different experiences where it made me realize, you know what, if people just remembered where they were, they'd realize that all these different things that they believe in currently is nonsensical. They would realize that. They would snap out of it. It'd be like, shoot, dang, what am I doing? Things gotta change, to repeat insanity, that's just madness. Oh boy. But now I'm just rambling. So have a good day. We'll see you later. Bye.